Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave Kay and today we've got in an Orange 5, a brand new one, and it's coming for Invisiframing. So let's crack on. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create some space on his workbench for his sheet. Okay, now this particular sheet is specific to this Orange 5, which has come direct from Invisiframe, and it's pre-cut, so every piece fits as it should do. So we need plenty of clean space to sit that on there so we can take the individual pieces off. The other thing that we need is as spray, as water spray. Now in this is around about a teaspoon of Johnson's baby shampoo. We found that that's the best thing to use, and that goes in at around about 800 mils of warm water. Okay, now the other thing that we need to say is that Invisiframe is best applied when it's over 18.5 degrees. It's at the moment 19.1 in here, so we're okay to apply that. Any colder, it just doesn't fit right. So it's important that it's the right temperature. Okay, so we've got a squeegee, okay, which is an important piece of the process. So what we need to do is, Invisiframing generally is quite a long process. It's quite time consuming, so what I thought we'd do is, rather than make a complete video of the whole Invisiframing of the whole bike, we'll show you just one piece, and we'll make it a big piece. The main piece, we'll make it the top tube of the kit, so you can see how it's applied and how we finish it off. So we'll move the camera over here. Okay, so the other thing that's extremely important when applying a Invisiframe to your bike is the frame, or the parts that you're applying it to, must be extra clean. Okay, really important. It's not often that we'll work or apply Invisiframe on a bike that's used. We like to apply Invisiframe to brand new bikes, purely and simply because every tiny scratch or mark that's on the frame comes through the Invisiframe when you apply it. So it's important that you know, the bike is kind of clean and brand new if possible. If not, then the frame must be like ultra clean and unmarked. Now what we generally do is, whichever piece that we're working on, we'll decide which section we're going to do, and we're going to clean that section. So what we use basically is Autoglym tar remover, and what we'll do is we'll clean one section at a time, apply the Invisiframe, and then move on to another section. There's no point in cleaning the whole bike first, because you'll get finger marks on it. So we just basically clean all the areas that we're going to apply the Invisiframe to. Now on this particular bike, the kit for this part of the bike is one piece. Okay, it's probably one of the biggest pieces apart from the down tube to apply. So it's important that we clean those areas. We don't want no grease on them. Okay, make sure we get all under there. Okay, and then once we've done that, then we'll use this clean part of the cloth and we'll just go over where we've actually rubbed that, where we've rubbed it before, to clean any marks off it. And once we're happy that it's perfectly clean and unmarked, then we try not to touch it with our hands until it's finished. So now that we've got this particular section clean, what we'll do is we'll spray it with a solution. Now this is around about 5 mil of baby shampoo and about 800 ml of water, as warm water. Now it's about the same temperature as the room, so it's about 19-20 degrees of water in here. Okay, now you need to coat it as much as you can. Get it absolutely soaking wet. Okay, and then find the appropriate piece in your kit. It'll be just about the biggest piece, and it'll be listed top tube. So we just generally, I know you can't see this, but I'm just pulling this piece off the backing paper. Okay, and you can see that now. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll wet that, and it's important that you don't drop it. Okay, now if you do drop it and it gets covered in muck, then take it inside and put it in a bowl of water and clean it that way, because otherwise any bits underneath it will come straight through your frame. Don't worry about the water on it, it will come out and we'll squeegee it out. So on this particular, I don't know whether you can actually see this, but on this particular piece, let me try and, you can see a little notch in the top. That's the front of the piece, and that goes centre in there. And if we turn it round the other way, there's one there as well, just so we know where that actually goes in relation, so we can follow the centre line down. Okay, so don't leave it too long before you apply it. We just lay it on top, okay, and then because it's wet both sides, we can actually manoeuvre it around to get it where we want to get it. It's pre-cut, so it's the right size for the frame, so we don't need to worry about cutting bits off here and there. It'll be exactly right. So what I've done basically is I've looked at my guide at the front, and I know that's centre at the front there, and I've looked at my guide at the back, and I know that's centre there. Okay, excuse me. So what I'll basically do is work on this area at the top first. So we'll get a squeegee, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to squeegee all the water out. So I'm not putting a lot of pressure on there, and I'm just working my way back from about a quarter way in to the front, just to get that water out of the top. Now I'm not trying to do any other part at the moment apart from this particular area that I'm working on. I don't need to make sure it's all tucked in underneath, but what we need to do is make sure this area is right first before we do anything else. So we're looking to get all that water out of the sides, dribbling down the sides, okay, on both the sides. Okay, so it's an important, this is obviously the part of the bike that you see, so it needs to be absolutely perfect. I mean, as does all areas of the bike really, but if there's any particular flaws in this section, then it looks really bad. So I'm just working my way back. Okay, I'm just making sure that we get all that water, and you can see it's starting to dribble down the edges there as I'm going down. Okay, so both edges are even. Okay, we've got the same amount of distance both sides, front and back, around the back as well. These pieces are just flapping around at the moment because we don't need to get them on. We need to concentrate on this area first. Now, once you've got the water out, then it's very difficult to pull off. So it's important that you get it in the right position before you start to squeegee it out, because trying to pull it off now, you would need to order another piece. It doesn't come off very well once it's stuck, and you can't really reuse it. So that's his top done. We're quite happy with that. that looks good, that's fine. There's no bubbles in there, there's no more water left in there. So what we'll do, we'll just I'll just turn the camera around to the back if we can. Okay. And these back pieces, we just need to offer them up. Sometimes it helps if you wet your fingers. If you find that it's starting to dry, wet your fingers, and then it's easier to handle the actual Invisiframe. Okay, so I'm working down now. Okay, I've got the back piece on more or less where it needs to go. So okay, so I'll start again at the front, and what I'll do is I'll take my squeegee and I'll just go down each section, just pulling that water out so it sits nice on the frame, just a little bit at a time. You don't need to do it all. Okay. Okay, and you can use your thumb to help you get that water out of the edges. Okay, and it's important that you just, as you're going along, just check that there's no bubbles in there. If there's bubbles in there, as long as you've not pressed it down too hard with a tool, then you will get those bubbles out by forcing them through to the edge. So it's important that you make sure there's no bubbles in there before you start to put too much pressure on your squeegee. Okay, so we're just about there with that on that side. Okay. Now what we've got basically is the lower edge of this side, which would tuck under the frame. I'm going to leave it to dry because it's quite a short piece, and if I try and fold that under now while it's still wet, then it'll just keep coming off the frame. So what I'll do is I'll leave that bit. It's important that you don't rush it. Sometimes these edges are best left till they're dry, and then you can work it in with your finger. So we'll just get this. This is slightly dry now, so I'll just give it a bit of a spray. That's it. Because if your frame's dry and you try and apply it and it sticks, you will struggle to get it off. So I'll just get that in the right place. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn this frame round and turn my camera around so you can get to the other side. Okay, so I brought you around to the other side. I've turned the frame round and put it a different way in the stand, and you can see that this piece now is completely loose around the edge there. So it's probably a little bit drier than what I'd want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spray some more water under there, and you can do that. That's it's quite useful to do because it just makes it a little bit easier to manipulate. The water's not going to get up on the top because we've already got as much water out there as we can. And it also, if you see something that's on the adhesive side, like a hair or something like that, then it's easy to get off while it's wet. Soak it wet, and you can touch it and manipulate it, and it won't affect the adhesive at all. But that's the best way of getting any pieces off before you actually apply it and stick it down. So let's get a squeegee. Okay, we'll get this back bit on. Okay, sometimes when you've got quite a lot of water under there, it takes a little bit to come out. But you better have too much water under there than not enough, because if you've got not enough under there, it's too dry, it'll stick straight away. Okay, so I'm working my way down. You can see that. Okay, so I'm pulling it down, working my way down, getting all that water out. Okay, and you can see it dripping out. I'm not trying to do too much, I'm just doing a bit at a time. Okay, and you can see that I'm actually... Okay, and you can see that sometimes when you try and press it down, it just lifts back up again. That's because there's quite a lot of water behind it. So I'm just working my way through, just getting all that water out, making sure there's no air bubbles in there. Okay, this piece, like I said about the other side, will just start to lift again, which is all right. We can leave it till it dries a little bit more and we can manipulate it with his hands. So what I'll do is I'll leave that alone now. Okay, and I won't touch it again. Not that part. I'll leave that part now for it to dry a little bit. Now don't be wanting to go get the hairdryer out and warm it all up and try and do it that way, because it won't work well. It's best left to dry on its own. And if you've got a place where you're doing it that's fairly warm, it won't take long at all. You can see the shampoo there in these little pieces here that are still lifting. That's fine. We can go back and we can just press those down with his fingers. But it's more important that the bit that we've got applied here has no bubbles in it at all. Now that bit will not come off again because it's with no water under it, and it's well stuck down as that. So it's important that that's perfect, and it is. So we'll leave that as it is. We'll wait for it to dry, and then we'll come back and we'll do these edges. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so we've come back. It's probably been about 3/4 of an hour, and we haven't touched this area at all in that time. Now we know when it's dry because you can feel this edge is tacky. Okay, and there's no water in there at all. So what we need to do, there could be a little bit of moisture under these bubbles, but so what we need to do is need to get a squeegee, and we need to try and press these down from the top. Okay, if they don't stick down after we've done that, then there's still moisture underneath. Okay, and we need to let it dry more. That's the only reason that it won't stick down, is because there's still moisture underneath there. So don't try, even though there's moisture underneath there, don't try and stick it down and get it underneath, because it won't work. You've got to let it dry on its own until you get to a point where you can put your finger on there and it doesn't come back up. It's nearly there now. Okay, it's nearly there now. So let's leave it another 10 minutes. Come back in 10 minutes. So, okay, so another 1/4 of an hour, 20 minutes, and I think we're about dry under there. You can tell because you can feel it's there. It's very, very tacky. You can hear it, possibly just a bit, just tacky there. So what we need to do here is the test is to just runner's thumb over one of those, put a bit of pressure on and see if it stays down. And I think we're just about there. Okay, the key thing about this is take your time. Okay, don't rush it. It's still a little bit wet under there, still a little bit damp. Look, they're still lifting in places. Okay, so look, they're still lifting. So take your time. If you've got a head torch, it's sometimes useful to put a head torch on because it puts you a little bit more light on so you can actually see. So if it's not dry, leave it and come back until it's actually dry, so you can actually feel. So what we're trying to do basically is to get a squeegee under there would be quite difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a thumb to force it round there, so it stays. It's just a little bit tacky, a little bit. Well, it's still not as dry as what I'd like it to be. So we'll leave it again. We're getting there. It's getting there, but don't rush it. Take your time. Right, we're back again. So what we're trying to do now basically is just finish this edge off. You can see that these are actually stopping down now. So what we're after basically is using his thumb just to work those edges down and under. Just a little bit at a time. You don't need to make sure that you're not actually leaving any bubbles there. Okay, so just get those edges over with your thumb. Just working on that bottom edge. Okay, you're not after finishing it off in terms of the underneath just yet. You just have to getting them bubbles out over that edge. And then once they're down, you can actually turn the bike upside down, and when it's dried even more, you can use your thumb just to peel those edges over that corner there, and just press them down and get all them air bubbles out, so you're flat just underneath that weld. Okay, just getting those, any air bubbles that's left in, just getting them pressed underneath. Okay, so here we are. Okay, it's not a race. It is very time consuming, and it's not easy to do. So what you've got to do basically is you've got to take your time and just work through until you get all those air bubbles out. Okay, you will get them out. You just need to take your time in doing it. Okay, so we just follow as thumbs and get all those edges down. Okay, and then tomorrow morning, when it's completely dry, or the next day, you need to just go around and just make sure all them edges are down, and there's no edges that are lifted, and because it'll be dry, it'll be easier just to force them down, just to rub your thumb towards the edge of the Invisiframe, and you'll find that any air that's left in there near the edge will just roll out with your thumb. Okay, so we've completed this top piece, which is the only bit that we've actually videoed. You need to just obviously make sure those edges are down. But it is time consuming. It's not easy to do, but the main thing is you need to take your time, and the more you do, the easier it becomes. But on a complicated bike with lots of different pieces, it can take nearly all day to finish it off and get the edges down. It's quite time consuming, and if you get stuck, if you don't fancy it, then, you know, let us know and we'll book it in and we'll do it for you. If you do actually damage a piece, then you don't need to buy the whole kit. You can actually just order that particular piece that you've damaged. It's fairly easy to come off. There's instructions in the kit that you get about how it actually comes off. There's a certain way you've got to take it off. If you don't do it the right way, it'll leave the adhesive on the paint, which is a nightmare to get off. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it, learned a little bit about it, and yeah, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Cheers, bye.